These were my favorite anime this season, and there are a few other shows that were pretty good too. There are some other shows I liked, but those are my recommendations. If you'd like to hear a bit more about every show I watched this season, stick around. Now, I consider the plot basics to be pretty well covered by a show's synopsis on streaming services or through its trailers, except Dead Mount Deathplay. It deserved better. Before I get into all of the shows, I'll give some context for my ratings. I give a number rating to every show I watch, but I don't grade individual aspects like the animation or music. It's simply based on how much I enjoyed watching it. A plus is going to be my 10s and 9s. A is for 8s, and B plus is for 7s. This is where I don't usually have many criticisms, just less positives. 6s go in B, which I do still consider a positive score and will recommend them situationally, but we're getting to the point where there are too many other shows to watch and I'll probably end up ghosting them. I put 5.5 to 4.5 all bunched in the C tier. These will either be shows I was conflicted on with love and hate, others are just fine, but never managed to pique my interest. I do still have distinctions between 4 and below, but at that point it doesn't matter too much. It's not something I want to watch. I'll be keeping it pretty short when it comes to most shows. I'm looking to highlight what I felt strongest about while watching it rather than just listing everything it did or did not do well. And a final note, I'm using letter grades instead of sticking with numbers because I just think it looks better that way. Starting from the bottom, F tier. Opus Colors. It's about the art. The art's awful. And yaoi show with 3 brothers? Why would you do this? All of these shows are bad, but Opus Colors really had nothing for me. I got a cheat skill in Another World and became unrivaled in the real world too. If you need to have a comma in your title, it needs to be shorter. Cheat skill is land ownership? What this actually means, he stabs a monster from behind an invincible barrier and gets free XP. Riveting. Animation barely exists, and when it does, it's pretty much incoherent. The marginal service. I don't like any of the characters. They have 1 trait at best and 2 traits at worst. Worse? Because second trait is brain damage. The action scenes were terrible. Are they really just going to sit there and fire their guns? Yes. Yes, they are. Kamikatsu. Genuinely interesting premise, totally undermined by terrible production value. I mean, just look at this. The concept was the only positive I scraped from this. The aristocrat's otherworldly adventure, serving gods who go too far. Cheat Isekai 10 million. He gets blessed with giga buffs that break stat caps. Shocking. I hated it less than other shows, but I still had some lingering hatred. Kizuna no Aliel. So boring. I struggled to watch this. We really spent half the episode watching our character wake up and walk to virtual class because she got distracted by someone drinking tea in a garden. Idol performance is bad. I would not sub. They showed it for a minute and a half. They seemed oddly proud of it. I mean, if you're looking for cringe, you are currently on YouTube. Summoned to Another World for a second time. Isekai Sludge. Even with the concept of being resummoned to another world, it was so generic I just couldn't get into it. While it wasn't the worst Isekai I've ever seen, animation was okay. I only hated one of the characters, but it didn't do anything to garner my interest, so it doesn't pass. Rokudo's Bad Girls. Comedy didn't connect with me. There were some decent jokes, but a lot of the comedy was from our characters making weird faces. I just found them gross rather than humorous. Barren plot. There isn't anything I anticipate in the story going forward. Main character found a magic spell that makes delinquent girls like him, and now what? In 3 episodes, the only goal he had was trying to make a better school life for him and his friends. But the 2 most powerful girls are already on his side. He's achieved his goal. It never felt like we were going anywhere. Cafe Terrace and its goddesses. 5 squatters have a man beaten for the crime walking into his own home. There was a semblance of a good idea when it came to the plot. Have our characters overcome the differences and successfully run a cafe. That could have been fun. It's just very paint by numbers. The character tropes shine brighter than their hair color. And it was irredeemably horny. Like, nobody knocks. Nobody! This is apparently a hot take. I found Hell's Paradise to be by far the most overrated show of the season. The first 3 episodes felt like a massive waste of time. I have too much to discuss here. I'll try to keep it focused. Episode 2. Why did we bring in 30 mooks for obvious main characters to kill?
They even Lampshade, they knew who the strongest prisoners were, and they only brought the rest because the Shogun wanted to see people die. That alone, I'll look past. But then we kill off 6 of our 20 characters in the third episode? What are we doing here? Killing off characters we thought were going to matter isn't the issue. What makes it bad is the presentation. For a simple change, it would have been far more impactful if the episode 2 beach brawl didn't happen. Instead, we got some light introductions to the other prisoners on the ship. And then once we get to the island, we have deaths play out as more sudden introductions to the brutality and chaos present there. Because by episode 3, we've already seen a lot of people die, and killing off more people isn't shocking. I was disappointed in pretty much all aspects except the art design. The animation was fine as well, but I was expecting better. Episode 2 did have a cool massacre by Gebimaru, but the episode 3 fight completely lacked tension as he was already established as the strongest prisoner on the island, and proceeded to mop the floor with his opponent off screen. And I can't forget, major crux of the plot is illogical. In episode 2, we're told that there is only one pardon available for whomever returns with the elixir. Why? Like, is it actually a problem if you have to pardon 10 criminals if your reward is an object of unimaginable power? This island has already proven proficient in killing people. Why would you possibly encourage the prisoners to fight amongst each other at the same time? This will be the first time in a while that I've hate watched something, because I want to be able to say definitively, no, it doesn't get better. A galaxy next door. I didn't know getting to know someone could be so boring. They go together to a clothing boutique, a bookstore, and a cafe. I just could not get invested into their conversation. It felt so slow and bland. Shiori herself being partially an alien is too normal. Her personal obsession with manga is the only character trait that stands out. And on the other side, Ichiro is just so timid and passive, I can't connect to him. And what about the manga? The moments dedicated to Ichiro's manga felt pretty bare bones. As a major connecting factor between our couples, I expected there to be a lot more detail about the actual creation of manga, and was left very unfulfilled. The first episode actually got me pretty interested in the show. It managed to kill that by episode 3 instead of 6, so marks for efficiency, I guess. And C tier. How Raeliana ended up at the Duke's Manor. As far as villainous shows go, this is pretty bland. I am a big fan of shows focused on politics, but the plot progression just wasn't that interesting. There was some decent verbal sparring, and I managed to watch all 3 episodes just fine, but nothing about the story or characters ever grabbed me. Yuri is my job. Horrible work environment. Main character literally gets kidnapped and forced to work at their cafe with no prior experience. Her first day, she gets thrown in and gets yelled at by her coworker because she doesn't know how to do anything. I would have walked out. Interesting plot hook in episode 3. Little spoiler, but Mitsuki wasn't an asshole to Hime for no reason. They have a history, and I am somewhat interested in exploring that, but overall it didn't leave a good first impression, so I'm gonna pass. My clueless first friend. The cutest little Chinibyo. Male lead is a fun character, definitely my favorite part of the show. But I am too disconnected from their issues. The characters feel pretty realistically written as children. I just don't care that much about bullying as a subject matter. Though the art style is the real tragedy. It just doesn't jive with me. And I don't think it's bad, but the story isn't something I'm interested in. Magical Destroyers. They do a lot of cool stuff with the animation. It's just very esoteric. I really don't know what's going on most of the time. It seems like there are a billion references I just don't understand. I could enjoy the animation for what it is, but I don't have any stakes for the events that are transpiring. Stuff just happens. For shows weird as this, I can't rate anything but a 5 out of 10. I might try to revisit this at some point, but I don't have a desire to keep watching it. One Hit Kill Sister. Animation has some nice moments, but it never matched the quality of the first episode. I was actually pretty excited for this after checking out the trailer, but I've cooled off on it a lot since. Very generic fantasy. Another in the horde of many uncreative settings. Nothing about the world they've been sent to stood out to me. And as it lacks other interesting hooks, the comedy is too sparse. It has some decent jokes, just not enough. Dead Mount Death Play. Novel reverse isekai setup. They actually got me. The first episode was well presented, and I did not predict the twist they had in store. Which is funny because it also had subpar production and presentation. Episode 2 is very awkward in direction and dialogue. Skipping between recent flashbacks and less recent flashbacks was very jarring. And then we had another fight scene. I'll enjoy this more if it decides to stop having long-winded exposition, but man, reusing animation 10 seconds apart in a fight scene is a very bad look. If production quality drops anymore, I won't be able to watch this. Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts. It's competent, writing's alright, and it has solid production values, but it doesn't do anything special to set itself apart. Very well worn Beauty and the Beast character dynamic, it just doesn't have any one aspect that stands out. World Die Star. High effort animation when it comes to the acting. It's got decent quality otherwise, but the scenes with more effort really stand out. This pretty much feels like a sports anime, but for theater kids. I don't like the characters having special sense powers. I liked what it was doing portraying the characters' acting abilities, but turning a nurtured talent into more of a fantasy element takes me out of the show. B tier shows that I think are actually good. Too Cute Crisis. Happy to be absurd. Ridiculous premise and it just runs with it. They're probably the most casual aliens ever. I love how they have no problem telling people that they come from another world, and everybody just rolls with it. Very limited focus of content. It's a bit repetitive after only 3 episodes. I don't think there's going to be enough variety to hold my interest for the whole season, but I have enjoyed enough to keep watching it for now. Mashal. I didn't know anything about Hell's Paradise before going to the season, but I had read some of Mashal, and it's probably my biggest disappointment of the season. Interesting and appropriately silly setting. A world where magic is an everyday thing isn't unique, but I like how it's presented. All of the characters are pretty off the wall, and there's a lot of fun little details about daily life. It does a good job of getting me invested in the world. It has some good jokes, but many are butchered. Presentation of humor was pretty substandard. I like the writing, but the direction feels much too slow and takes the wind out of way too many moments. I think the source material is solid, but the adaptation of it here left a lot to be desired. The legendary hero is already dead. Interesting, well-defined setting. This world has rules and our character has to work around them. Watching our main character figure out how to work with his new body was really fun. The story was a bigger draw for me than the comedy. While there were some good jokes, I found myself more interested in the world and our characters than anticipating the next punchline. It wasn't what I was expecting, but I definitely enjoyed it. Kubo-san won't let me be invisible. Adorable and charming. I like this a lot, but this is all it has to offer. If you don't love our main character's interactions from start, feel free to move on because it's not really doing anything new. I find it to be well executed, but it's not particularly varied in the situations our characters find themselves in, and there are many shows like it. The only thing it has to separate itself from the rest is that Junta literally bends light around himself, which is used for some good gags. The Dangers in My Heart. Sweet and tender moments. I think it was a bit harsh on this in episode 1, probably because of the bike throw. It felt like the show is going to be all about weird, silly things happening because the dude is a total weirdo. But I was pleasantly surprised because in just a couple of episodes, there were some really nice emotional moments. In the 3rd episode, Yamada breaks her nose after getting hit with a basketball, and hearing her tear up and apologize to her mom over the phone for something that wasn't her fault hits hard. Combine that with Ichikawa now realizing how much he cares for her was very touching. Production value. Animation, music, and voice acting were all great. Going in, I was expecting more middling quality, but it sufficiently impressed me. Will Ichikawa progress? Our main guy has got some funny internal monologues, but I wish he'd be 20% less socially inept. For this stage of the story, it's fine, even if I'm not a big fan of the trope, but too often I get bored waiting for the story to advance to the next step, and Ichikawa has already fallen in love. I'm probably not going to make it if we have to wait until the end of the season for a confession of some kind. Insomniacs After School. Just relaxing. If you want a show to just lean back and watch after a stressful day at work, this is it. Your ability to make any particular pastime interesting is the most vital aspect of shows like this. And as someone who had a less than passing interest in astronomy, it definitely succeeded. The serenity in simply enjoying the beauty the universe has to offer is something which doesn't have an equal. Otaku Elf, a very simple delight featuring my Oshi of the season, Elda. Watching her slowly become more sociable after spending more time with Koito was a very satisfying progression. The second most fun animation of the season. Lots of great faces and visual gags. I loved Koito's monologue at the end of the 1st episode. Understanding why everyone loves Elda because of her unchanging nature in a world that is changing faster than ever is a very astute observation. All in all, fun comedy with a focus on a hobby very near and dear to my heart. My love story with Yamada-kun at level 999. MMO player gets his girlfriend to play with him, and then dumps her for another girl he met playing the game? I think this show forgot its fantasy tag. Some of the better direction this season.
Music, sound effects, and editing came together to support some consistently strong comedy. And I love the MMOs as a focus. I don't actually play them, but their cultural influence over gaming as a whole makes the references here very relatable. It's not doing anything innovative, but it doesn't have to. It's got great jokes, and I would recommend it to anyone who likes rom-coms. A tier. My Home Hero. A well-written crime thriller, fairly uncommon genre for anime. I really enjoyed the pacing it had, continually increasing the stakes as Yakuza pried more and more into their daily life. Yakuza are well situated as antagonists. While they are very dangerous, they have their own rules they have to play by, and they don't just kill everyone in their way. Even if some aspects of this are unrealistic, Tetsuo's maneuvering around the Yakuza problem seemed plausible enough that I remained immersed in the story. Reika is an actual magician. If I am to have one criticism, the show is not very pretty. I am unreasonably snobbish when it comes to determining a show's worth based on its art and animation. And while I consider it to be very much lacking in that, the story is strong enough for me to look past it. In the end, it's about family. That's what's so powerful about it. But really, two parents that will do anything to protect their child, that resonates deeply with me. It's held tension extremely well, and I was engrossed the whole way through. And for a prequel to one of my favorite anime of all time, Konosuba and an explosion on this wonderful world. Elite comedy. It's more Konosuba. Although I didn't enjoy it as much as Konosuba proper, you don't need to have seen the original, and it is still one of my favorite shows from the season. And my favorites of the season? A+. Skip and Loafer. I love slice of life, so I already knew I was going to like this, but it ended up surpassing my expectations and easily checked off every box I was looking for. Mitsumi is adorable. Her innocence combined with ambition is a great mix. She is best girl. Flows so smoothly. Scenes do well to push characterization as well as build up great jokes later down the line. Mitsumi ends up being cringe, but it's a sacrifice that had to be made. This art style is one of my favorites. I found myself making screenshots more often than any other show this season. There was not much focus on romance at the start. They already like each other, but they're not the like each other phase yet. And my top two shows of the season. They have a lot of fun things I want to talk about, and I hope I'll have the time to do so at the end of the season, but they have a lot of great plot developments that are best left unspoiled, so I'll be avoiding those here. Heavenly Delusion. Obscenely high quality animation. All of the action scenes have looked marvelous, let alone a scene where they're just walking around. A fascinating setting. I like that we don't know any more about this world than our protagonists do. What caused the apocalypse will likely be revealed later, but I enjoy trying to fill in the blanks. The world feels threatening, mostly. The monsters are presented as credible threats, though the bandits in the first episode, not so much. Like, if you're really standing that close, they could just tackle you. It's one silly scene, but if they're that blasé about future events, it's gonna hurt my immersion. Oshinoko. Absolutely brilliant. Few series have left me with such a positive first impression. These characters, out of everything, to choose one aspect to highlight, it has to be the whole cast. I love all of them. The twins, the director, the babysitter, they're all perfect. It does have a slight advantage. Starting with a movie-length first episode that covers the entire first arc gave it a lot of room to breathe and tell its story. Oshinoko is a drama series focused on the ugly side of the entertainment industry, but I don't want to spoil even the first episode if you haven't seen it, so I will leave it as a very strong recommendation. Hey, thanks for checking this out. If you want to hear more of my opinions on stuff weeks after it's relevant, maybe subscribe. I recorded this back for week 3, and I'd say my perspective on the season hasn't changed. The biggest difference between then and now is that I hate Hell's Paradise even more.
He said it'll be out when it's out, and we like that. It'll be out when it's out. But great work ethic.